Hey, this is Kyle at ProjectionHub, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create a business plan for a salon booth rental business. I've made a video on just a salon in general, like a hair salon, but this one is focused on if you want to open up a salon where you want the stylist to actually rent the booth from you rather than being employees of the salon. And so in this video, I'm going to be going through this pre-filled out, fictitious, generic example of a business as if I was opening a salon rental booth. It's funny to say that over and over again. And this will be available for free. You can grab a copy of this to use it as a guide in filling out your own business plan. No strings attached. And while I'm going to go through the entire structure, the main goal will be to highlight 5 key things that I think make a business plan from good to great as far as a lender goes, from the lender perspective. And this goal is to try to increase the likelihood of getting approved for financing with your business plan. And that's what I hope to help you with today. As I mentioned, my name is Kyle. I've been with ProjectionHub for over 2 years now, helping businesses create financial projections. Before that, I was an SBA lender for about 7 years. And I helped people prepare loan applications by reviewing their business plans, their financial projections, underwriting, all that kind of stuff for the loan. And we helped a lot of salons. Some were hybrid, booth rent and employee structure. And I have a little bit of experience there. And at ProjectionHub, we've helped more than 50,000 different businesses create their financial projections for business plans, loan applications, acquisitions, investments, you name it. And so we've helped a lot of salon. A salon is one of the most common customers of our projection template, which I'll get into a little bit later. Without further ado, and I guess if at any point you like this video, give it a thumbs up. That really helps us as a fellow small business. And subscribe if you want to see additional content. It's okay if not. And let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, so why do you need a business plan? Probably sounds generic, probably already know the answer to it. But just to be clear, that the business plan's purpose isn't to educate the audience on what a salon booth rent business is. They're already gonna know what that is. Instead, what we want our business plan to do is to distinctly demonstrate our roadmap to go from where we are today to reaching our goals and being successful and ultimately repaying a loan if we're producing this for a lender. And so we want it not to be just like a generic anecdotal summary about what our business will do or what it's about, but rather we want to show very specific examples about things that we're doing to almost make it undeniable that we're not going to not reach our goals. We are going to reach our goals and that the path is laid out and we're just going to go through that step by step to be successful. So first thing I want to point out is this table of contents, because I want to demonstrate that this business plan is only 17 pages long. Now, this again is a generic fictitious example. So when you're writing your business plan, you're probably going to want to elaborate a little bit more than this in some of these sections, but not by much. I think the ideal business plan length is in the 15 to 20 pages. If you're getting much longer than that, the risk is some of the important details will get lost. When I was a lender, I would sometimes receive a business plan that would be 50 pages long, maybe even longer. And there's just no way we're going to read that whole thing. So you end up skimming a lot of that. And if important details are scattered across all 50 of those pages, some of them might get missed. And you're not going to be there with your lender when they're reading your business plan. And so you won't really have a chance to point those things out. And keep it short and sweet. If you need to write a really long business plan as like an exercise to get all of your thoughts down in one place, to have a master plan, definitely do that. But what you provide to your lender should be like a refined version of just the most crucial points to fill that out. And another thing I'll point out is that the financial plan or the financial projections are over half of the business plan. And so we'll get into that a little bit later, but just to point out, this narrative portion is really less than 10 pages. Okay, so hopping into things here, and I will highlight those 5 key points when we get to them in the business plan. But first up is the executive summary. I want you to think about that as like the cover letter to a resume for a job application. We're grabbing different highlights of different key components throughout the business plan and putting them front and center. And a couple of things to point out here. This initially should just be like your founder story. Is really what that should be. Talk about the ownership and what the business is doing. The objectives, I would make sure if you're going to include objectives to put some measurable achievements in there. For example, this just says to establish Glow Avenue as the premier salon booth rental location in Minneapolis. I'd be a little bit more specific with that and say something like, we want to be profitable by the end of the 2nd year, or we want to have, 20 booth rents by the end of whatever year. So make it an achievable goal that means something. Long-term, same thing. This says expand presence to other cities in Indiana. but maybe be more specific than that. Say we want to open up 2 additional locations by year 5 or something like that. As a more distinct goal about your plans for the business, long-term plans for the business. One thing this section is missing that you could consider putting in here that I've seen before, and that's just one paragraph, one point that could be focusing on the financial details. So you could have your startup costs, how much funding you're planning to ask for, your estimated break-even point, that kind of thing could be included in there. Okay, next up is the company description section. Really just an extension of the executive summary. I even think, here we have business background. It's a repeat of the same thing, right? This is really just an extension. We're going to talk about target market and then the unique selling proposition. Now, one thing about the unique selling proposition is I would only include this if you're actually going to offer something that is unique and sets it apart. You don't want to put something like, we're going to change the world. That's just not reality. And so I would focus on, if you really do have something that's like a secret sauce that gives you a competitive advantage, include that here. If that's the owner is lifelong friends with the owner of a salon academy, and that could relate to having a pipeline of booth renters or something like that. That's a great unique selling proposition. Include that in here. Okay, let's see here. Okay, moving on. Market analysis. In this section, we'll have our first key points. I'll get to that at the end of this one. And so the purpose of the market analysis is to just really demonstrate that there is room in the market for another salon. Now, talking about the salon booth is a little tricky because we've got to demonstrate 2 things. One, we're still a salon, right? So we still have to talk about and make sure that there's room in the market for another salon. You have to attract people to come that want to come get their hair cut and all of that. That's still important to us, even though the booth renters might be operating their own little mini businesses. It's still ultimately on the salon as a whole to play that role. There are many times where you're going to go to get your hair cut and you may not realize that your stylist or the person that cuts your hair actually rents a booth there instead of as an employee, and they may not be different to you. And your business plan still needs to demonstrate how you're going to operate as a functional salon, but then also needs to address the fact that you have to attract tenants. You're also a landlord in a sense in attracting those stylists. I would say a salon suite rental is a little bit different because they take up so much of a space. That relationship really is more like a pure landlord relationship. But a booth rent one, I would say, it's a little bit more similar to like your normal salon where the stylists are employees and you're pulling double duty. You got to attract both audiences here. So be mindful of that as you're going through your business plan, is you need to be talking about this from the perspective of a salon owner and hoping you're attracting customers, but you really have 2 kind of customers in this example. So just be mindful of that. When you're talking about the industry, you're needing to identify that there's room in the market for another hair salon, but that also you think that there's a need and a demand for a booth rent type salon in that area too, if that makes sense. So you can see the things that are included here. Competitor analysis. If you happen to know other salons that are booth rent structure, those are obviously your direct competitors if they're close by, because they're not only competing in customers, but they're also competing in stylists to rent space. And so those would be your most direct competitors. But then also, I would just in general include any salon that's in a 10-mile radius or something like that, 5-10-mile radius, just that you identify who they are, what they do well, what they're not doing well. If they have really poor Google reviews or something like that, you should include those things. But key point number 1, and it'll move quickly after we get here to key point number 1, and that is all of these things are important. You want to include all this information, write more detail into that. But to make it this section from good to great, if we can provide any specific examples of data or research that we're doing to demonstrate that, yeah, there really is room in the market for our business, for an additional salon, for a booth rent salon. So this can be a little bit tricky to do, again, because we're trying to pull double duty. We need to prove, 1, that our market can support another salon, and 2, that stylists actually want a booth rent salon. So let's look at some of the examples that are included here. So do some analysis on local pricing to see maybe there's a price point that's not being met. I think this one probably makes the most sense. Conduct a survey among local beauty professionals to determine their preferred amenities and features in a salon booth. And it's not listed here, but I'll show one more example. Okay, so if you go to Google Ads, you can create a free Google Ads account and you can use this tool called Google Keyword Planner. And this allows you to simulate how often are certain things being searched in a target location? So I've got this location targeted set to Indianapolis, Indiana. And then I want to know how often are people searching booth rent salon near me, okay? A person who needs to get their haircut is not going to search booth rent salon near me. A person that is interested in renting a booth is going to search that. So now I can see a few interesting things. One, some related keywords. How often is that being searched? Most importantly, I think the trend is the most important thing. So I can see in this area, the year-over-year change up 200%. Now it's only 40 searches, but it's higher, 200% higher than it was before. And so that's at least an indication to me that there is an increase in demand for a booth rent salon. So that's good to know. We can do this same exercise for salon near me, hair salon near me, haircut near me. So this is the person that's actually wanting to get their haircut and they're searching for it. So we're checking, is there any demand for people that want to rent a booth? Now we're checking, is there a growing demand of people that actually want to get a haircut? And as you can see, all the trend data is positive. Plus 100%, plus 80%, plus 50%, plus 20%. So that's a great sign. So this exercise only demonstrates demand. It's obviously not demonstrating supply. So there very well may be too many hair salons or booth rent salons in the area. This is not going to demonstrate that. One thing might be this competition. That's competition for those keywords. That just means when people are bidding for Google ads, like when you do a Google search and the top 3 results are Google ads, I would just say salons probably aren't typically a competitive Google, like a Google ad industry. So that's not super surprising to me. So your best guess of the competitiveness, or if there's too many or not enough salons, is probably gonna have to be a little bit more firsthand. You're doing that research, you're checking out a map, that kind of thing, firsthand research. But anyways, that just demonstrates, even just in 3 minutes, like, do that type of research, include that in your market analysis search, rather than just having text like this. Include some things like that back up what you're saying. Okay, moving along, marketing and sales strategy and key point number 2 will be in this section. So we're going to outline, what are our services going to be? Are you going to sell any products? Pricing strategy for those? How are you actually going to sell services when people are, is that mostly going to be walk-ins, or are you going to do advertising? You're going to have a website. You're going to be active on social media. All of this, again, important. Make sure you're filling out these sections with your own unique ideas and concepts and spend some time on that. But key point number 2, similar to key point number 1, is actually demonstrating. So we've already demonstrated, like, hey, we actually think there is room in the market, and here's the things we researched to evidence to support that. Key point number 2 is now we need to demonstrate what we're going to do to actually get them in the door. So it's one thing to say, like, we're going to have a website and we're going to do some advertising, but what can really make your business plan shine is if you can demonstrate traction. Now, traction meaning like momentum. It's a popular word in the tech space, and a lot of times that's like if a company wants to raise investment on a new software or social media app or something, they can say, we've already had 10,000 free users in our testing phase. We would like to raise money so that they can scale it larger, right? So they haven't technically launched, but they already have 10,000 users. So they're proving that there's momentum, there's traction, there's interest. So this is a little bit tricky in a physical, like a business that has a brick and mortar location, a physical location, because it's hard to, the 2 best examples of traction are pre-launch revenue. So you're actually making money before you officially launch. Second one is like names on lists, like people who are interested and aware of what you're doing. And so pre-sales is going to be a little bit tricky because we don't have a building open yet. The only example of that would be if you are yourself are a stylist. So maybe you are cutting hair on the side or at a different salon and you're still cutting and you're planning to open up your own booth rent salon, not like renting a booth, but like the whole salon is booth rent. You keep cutting on the side. That can count as traction because you're going to bring a book of business, and maybe you're going to keep cutting hair when you open up your own booth rent salon, and you're going to bring all your customers with you. So that's not nothing, right? That's traction. I like this example here. Build a list of interested stylists. So maybe you're starting to build up a list of potential tenants right when you leave, and then they're going to bring their business with them too, right? So you're not starting at square 1, you're starting at square 4 because you've got 3 stylists plus yourself bringing all of your books of business to your independent booths. And that's what the business is going to get started doing. So that's an example of traction. Like If you just give this to your lender, they might be like, okay, but what they're going to be probably making their decision on mostly is your projections or your personal financial statement. But if you can give them something like this, where you say, me and 4 other stylists are already prepared to bring our book of business over. 4 of my 10 booths are going to be rented on day 1. That starts to sound really good, right? Now it's starting to sound like that lender would be silly not to approve you, because it sounds like such a good return for them. So you can see how what demonstrating that traction is. It demonstrates hustle, preparedness, and just a high degree of likelihood. So that's key point number 2. Moving along, operations and management. Here you're going to start to talk about yourself, your experience, the team, how you're going to actually operate the business. You can talk about the facility if you'd want a little bit, how many booths you're going to have, any key partnerships, that kind of stuff. But key point number 3 is making sure you highlight the relevant industry experience. So I think in a booth rent scenario where you own the actual booth rent, it's probably not absolutely necessary, but I think still pretty important to have some experience in the salon industry. Maybe not necessarily imperative that you've had experience being like a landlord or owning a property that you've rented out before. But what's key here is demonstrating to the lender that you know what you're getting yourself into and you are like prepared to succeed. Like you have the people around you with the skill set you need to be able to do that. And so we want to leave the lender with no doubt that you won't be able to achieve what you've said in your plan. There's a difference between having a bad plan and good people to execute it, and a good plan but bad people that can't execute it. So ultimately they're making a loan to people and not to the business plan. And so you need to be able to demonstrate your experience. And if you have any skills that are transferable that aren't necessarily specific to a salon, include that. So maybe you come from a long career in marketing and you're really good at selling things and advertising and graphic design and web design. Those are still good skills. Include those things. That's really important and can be a good contributor to your success. But you might need to have a partner or a co-founder or a key employee that is going to have that experience. So like using this example, Peter Sanders' entrepreneurial background, he's got experience starting and managing businesses. So in business development and client relationships. So he's done that before. And then Emily Sanders' experience is understanding market trends in the beauty industry. So another example of this could be if you had a partner or a key employee who's been a hairstylist for 20 years, right? And what experience she brings. So this is a little bit, for a booth rent salon, this is a little bit tricky, but I think you probably get the point, because you just want to make sure you or the team around you has a sufficient skill set to make sure the lender feels confident that you guys know what you're doing. Okay, financial projections are the big one here, and the most important part of your business plan. I know we're a little bit biased here, but even when I was a lender, we may read the business plan once, maybe twice, but we would refer to the projections a lot for startups and making a lending decision. And so first we got our startup costs here outlined. Let me zoom in a little bit. Here's like a quick financial overview of 5 years of revenue, cost of goods sold, profit percentages. Here's some salon specific data, like how many booth renters we're gonna have, revenue per booth, retail sales, some key ratios over the 5 years. And then we've got, oops, I think I messed something up there. Then we've got our operating expenses. So like our monthly overhead recurring expenses. And then we've got our 5-year financial statements for our profit and loss, cash flow projections, balance sheet, break-even point, and like sales growth. So this is a lot of times the point in a business plan where startups or founders start to get a little overwhelmed or maybe confused. And full transparency, that was created using this template. This is a little bit of a shameless plug, certainly not required. The business plan is still free. You can grab it and use that, and hopefully that is helpful for you. But you're gonna have financial projections, and there's 3 ways you're gonna have it. You're gonna be able to create them. 1, you're gonna create them yourself from scratch, which would be very difficult to do. 2, you're gonna pay an accountant to create your financial projections. Probably gonna cost you thousands of dollars, especially if it's a new accounting relationship. You're gonna have to collect a lot of information and start building things from scratch. Probably gonna be pretty expensive, thousands of dollars expensive. 3, use a template And that is what I have for you here. This was built by CPA on our staff, and using our experience with salons and booth rent salons specifically, that's why this was created. And I'm just going to show you really quickly how it works. It's very easy to do. We've got 4 blue tabs here where we're going to be inputting some information. We're only editing these blue boxes. So we've got our startup costs. If we're going to have any investors, if we're going to have any loans, it's going to help us calculate how much cash. Do we actually have enough cash to get this business started? This page, which may seem overwhelming at first glance, I assure you it's not. Whoops, that's the wrong button. Here you can outline basically your booth renters, right? So in this example, the owner, myself, is going to actually keep working and I'm going to pay myself a salary. The rest are going to be booth renters, and I can say which month I plan for them to start. How much rent, what's their rent that they're going to pay, because that's revenue for me in the business. And then they don't have expenses tied to them because they're renting the booth. That's kind of the point of the booth rent, is they cover all their own expenses. Now you do have the option here to, if you want to have both, you can have employee and you can input that information. If you want to have a hybrid, maybe you have some employees and some booth rents, you can certainly do that in this model. And then you can calculate your cost of goods sold calculation here, like your growth rate and different income and expenses. If you're going to sell any products, like in the salon, you can have those here. And then I think you can split those. So yeah, here you can see you're going to have a contribution between booth renters, employees, owner, like who gets what percentage and what percentage of their customers will actually purchase things. So it's, again, we're only editing these blue boxes. What I like about the template is it's not just asking you what's your estimated monthly revenue. Instead, it's helping you use these specific booth rent assumptions to calculate your revenue. For the numbers you should know about your business, you're going to put those together and calculate something rather than just pulling a number out of a hat or out of thin air and saying that's my estimated monthly revenue. And then you're going to put in your monthly expenses, your overhead here. You can edit all of these, the categories. And then if you're going to have any salaried employees, you can have that here. And then it will produce all of the financial statements that your lender needs. So now that shameless plug is over, I just want to mention that key point number 4 is not having financial projections. They're required. They're a minimum requirement for a business plan. Key point number 4 is making sure that they're realistic and within kind of industry expectations. And so the best way to go about doing that is just by benchmarking it against things you can search for on the internet. So we can look at our projections, look at some of these key points, wherever you want, whichever one you want to find. And then you can either go to Google and search for it, one at a time for different data points. What's a typical profit margin? That's maybe a little bit tricky if you want to get it specific to booth rent versus just like a salon. Google's probably going to combine all of those searches. You can also use a tool like ChatGPT or Bard if you're comfortable with that. And I just asked, give me some key financial typical ranges for a booth rent salon. And I can see here, gross profit 60 to 80%, net profit 20 to 50%, 80% occupancy. So let's check some of that out. 20 to 50% net profit. So our net profit is 7%, gets up to 16%. So this is pretty conservative. I'm kind of low the range, which if you're going to pick a side to be on, conservative is the side to be on, right? If I'm giving myself a lot of buffer and not assuming, it would be, if I was saying I was going to have 60% profitability, that might be a little bit more concerning. I think gross profit was 40 to 60%. So we're on the conservative side there as well. And then I think, okay, no, this isn't where I'm going to talk about booth rent. So you could talk about your occupancy if you'd like to, but you don't necessarily have to calculate that into your projections. So anyways, that's key point number 4. Make sure they're realistic. Make sure they're within industry expectations. And if you hang with me, I'll give you a promo code for that projection template right after point number 5. And the last point is being prepared to talk about skin in the game with your lender. Essentially, when I was a lender all the time, people would say they want to keep their personal and their business separate, and they didn't want to sign on the loan personally just for the business. And I'm just here to tell you that's just not how it works. You should keep your finances separate, your bank accounts and your bookkeeping separate between the business and personal. But if you're getting a business loan, you're going to be having to personally guarantee it. You're going to have to give collateral. If you don't own the building, you're not going to have enough equipment to collateralize that. You're probably going to have to contribute some personal assets, or pledge some personal assets, whether that's a second mortgage on a house, a free and clear car, a co-signer. You're also going to have a cash investment. The lender is not going to give you 100% of the funds that you need. probably give you 80%, 90%. So those are just things to keep in mind. Is you don't have to put that in your business plan and say, I'm willing to give away all these things. Just be prepared for that conversation. They're not trying to take over your life or ruin your life. They're just trying to hedge their bets and mitigate their risk in the event that the loan does not get repaid. So that's all that they're doing there. Just be prepared to have that conversation. So that being said, that is key point number 5. Let me grab you that promo code. Did I pass it? I think I did. PH20BP will get you 20% off that template. The template's already less than $100. So pretty good value there. We offer free support as well. And we have a video guide of how to fill it out here that walks you through the template. Contact us at support@ProjectionHub.com if you have any questions, and give us a thumbs up if you appreciated the video, and leave us a comment if you have any questions or you need something from our team. But we wish you the best of luck. Thank you.